Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Friday, June 6th, 2025, and today we're going to talk about dirty produce, jumping worms, and it's Feedback Friday. So let's do it. All right, well, welcome to Friday, everyone. We did it. Well done. I have had a hot, relatively busy, productive week on the farm. I got a little mixed milpa-inspired plot seeded, which I'll talk about later. I got some watermelons planted. Both of those plantings were into some cover crop residue that I mowed. This is after mowing and then tarping for like 3 weeks. Looks pretty good. Wasn't even a very good tarp, but it looks pretty kilt. Oh, look, black snake. Hi, friend. Indeed, no shortage of snakes around the farm right now. Solely garter snakes and black snakes so far, so that's good. Those non-venomous ones are preferred. Anyway, yeah, got to do a lot of stuff this week that I wanted to do, like those two things that are not necessarily the most profitable things, but also, of course, got lettuce and tomato management and all those things done as well, because I have to do those to earn money, which I think is generally considered a good business practice. All right. It's Friday, which means Feedback Friday, where we explore what you all were saying about this week's topics. On Monday, we talked about June in general, along with pests being the future of ag and some other things. And at LKSF9820 asked about something that I had said, quote, can you explain, quote unquote, starting more tomatoes in June, please? They carry on growing and cropping as long as conditions allow. Is it that you've run out of space for them to grow, so need smaller plants, question mark, end quote. Okay, so yes, good question. This probably does take a little elaboration for why we start more tomatoes in June. For our tunnel tomatoes, they grow all the way until November. We don't have to worry about starting them again. We start them in January or early February, plant them in April. They're just good to go from then on out until basically I want to get rid of them. But for our field tomatoes, where we grow largely heirloom types and red slicers, those will often get a good run, give us a lot of good harvests, and then blight out or stop if they're the determinant type, which means they basically put on all their fruit at once, ripen all at once, you harvest it all at once, pretty much. Anyway, we're just hot and humid, and it's hard to give tomatoes the TLC required in the field to keep them happy all summer long like you can in the tunnel, where, it's dry and the leaves don't stay wet. Also, like I said, we grow some determinant tomatoes, which once they're done, they're done. So yeah, we kind of have to replace those. And we often start another round in June so that we can come in the summer, in the late summer, with a fresh batch of happy field tomatoes when other growers have all but given up because, they blighted out. And also on Monday, at McKenna Andrew Fox wrote, quote, interested in a current farm tour. Thanks for your daily shows, end quote. Thanks. And I talked about this like a month or so ago, but at the moment, unfortunately, as you can probably imagine, between this show, farming and family duties, also I'm now the president of my local soccer club. I barely get the stuff done that I need to get done in a day. So for the time being, at least, farm tours are kind of out of the picture for us. So yeah, sorry about that, y'all. I know that would be fun, but unfortunately, at the end of the week, time is not something I have left. Anyway, on Tuesday, we had the great Erin Worrell on to talk about her experiences starting a farm solo as a busy mom, no less. And lots of great responses to that episode. At Megan E. Amato said, Erin is awesome, and so was this episode. At Bizarre Parade said that this was real talk, much appreciated. Loads of just comments exactly like that, and lots of people enjoyed having both of the interviews this week. I also enjoyed having those interviews myself, so I will try to sneak in more interviews into the show as we go forward because they are a lot of fun. 20 to 30-minute episodes is not long enough time to really dive into anything in too much detail, but you get some really good bits, and Erin was, as always, awesome. Also on Tuesday, at Matt Moyer I40 asked, quote, Jesse, any ideas when hats will be back in stock again, end quote. Soon, actually, probably within the next few weeks, new hats are incoming. So watch this space, or any space. Probably this space would be the best one to watch. Then on Wednesday, we had the great Becca Radomski-Bish on to chat about the state of birds, which was wildly enlightening to me. I learned so much in that short amount of time about what we are doing right for the birds and also some things that we were or / are potentially doing wrong as growers. Also at Makar 40503 wrote, quote, awesome podcast, love the Merlin app and have been using it for a while. I just need to reconsider where to put my birdhouses, which are nailed into trees in my yard. The little sweating and a laughing emoji. end quote. Yeah, I have some up on some cedar posts that I need to get a guard for as well to keep the snakes and other critters out of there. Ecological traps was a really interesting concept to me that came from that episode. Basically trying to avoid creating habitats for birds, etc., that kind of attract them, that actually act as traps by enabling snakes and rodents, etc., to easily reach those nests. Also at Dulet7960 wrote, quote, great interview and discussion. I've learned a few new strategies to help our birds. I understand the spirit of quote unquote planting extra to share with our bird friends, but that often does not work in the real world. I can't plant a few extra rows of fruit trees or berries and then somehow that's a win-win. Some bird species will often damage the vast majority of a fruit crop, and injured fruit often leads to increased disease pressure for the remaining fruit. I love birds, but it's challenging coexisting sometimes, end quote. And yeah, this is something I wish we'd been able to explore a little bit more. So perhaps a conversation sometime in the future about managing birds ecologically in an orchard would be a great topic as well. Anyways, great feedback on both of those interviews. Two really great guests in a row there, and I'm very honored to have had them on the show. Then on Thursday, it was back to me, rolling solo, talking about what is happening in a compost pile and the basics of soil amending, and Georgie Lee 9099 wrote, quote, could we get a shorty video on a little series of Jadam amendment ideas, double emoji smiley faces, end quote. Thanks. And yeah, maybe. I don't actually actively use a ton of Jadam amendments beyond the JMS amendment, which is one I do love. But I could probably find a good interview for that conversation in the future, because I do appreciate the idea of utilizing what is around you to basically create your own specific nutrient solutions, fight pests, all the things that Jadam is about. So it's definitely worth exploring. Yeah, and I love that stuff. I think that is something we definitely need to explore more and honestly research more. Anyway, great stuff as always this week, y'all. And huge shouts to Becca and Aaron for coming on. Shouts to Mike for getting all those edited and ready to roll before he left for his dance parties. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. Then when we come back, we'll talk jumping worms. BRB. Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. If you're listening to this, you probably found 5 rare minutes to breathe. But what got pushed back further down the to-do list to make that happen? If it's your CSA newsletter, you're not alone. Farmhand's new newsletter builder was made for busy farmers. It automates weekly emails, drives add-on sales, and makes it easy to keep your customers in the loop without spending hours behind a screen. It launches this summer, but our listeners can request early access now. Visit farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by Peaceful Heritage Nursery. If you're looking for hardy and resilient fruit trees, berry plants, or pawpaw trees, then check out Peaceful Heritage Nursery. Peaceful Heritage Nursery LLC is a mail-order nursery shipping premium quality fruit trees and berry plants across the USA. They specialize in resilient, non-GMO plant genetics for small growers. Their diverse selection includes berries, cold hardy figs, passion fruits, gumi, mulberry, and much more. They're famous for their diverse selection of premium quality grafted pawpaw trees. 5-star Google ratings and customer testimonials attest to their commitment to excellence in quality and service. Find them at peacefulheritage.com and join the mailing list. Once again, find them at peacefulheritage.com. Use the promo code NOTILL for 10% off your first order. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes from Patreon member Casista, who writes, quote, jumping worms are an emerging problem in the USA. How does a non-entomologist know when they have jumping worms? Not what the taxonomic books say about if you hold this or that part up to a lamp and really stare at a pinned specimen. How does a farmer identify them in the field? They jump, after all. You have only a few seconds to identify them before they wiggle away. How is that really different from what you see with night crawlers? Thoughts on using brassicas to keep them at bay or pouring mustard extract on the ground? Reintroduce more night crawlers, attract specific birds to eat them, not gifting them by accident to friends along with materials from infested land. How fast are they spreading? End quote. Lots of great questions there. And how have we not discussed jumping worms yet? It's pretty amazing. First, for those of you who don't know, jumping worms are a non-native invasive species here in the US, but also pretty much everywhere at this point that they're not supposed to be and can survive. Spread largely by moving soil and nursery stock, but also just in the soil on the bottom of boots with cocoons in it. Jumping worms have larger bodies, breed very quickly, and are huge House of Pain fans. And the concern, much as it is with the European earthworms, which are also invasive, I think most people don't realize that, is that the earthworms are incredibly voracious, will devour leaf litter rapidly, grow twice as fast as European earthworms, change soil physical and chemical properties, bogart the food from other worms, and ultimately alter their ecosystems. Think of it like this. When you change the chemistry in a soil and remove huge portions of the leaf litter, slower growing perennial plants that used to thrive there will no longer, because the soil will be drier and the nutrients available will be different in different proportions. Some plants, like certain grasses, wild mustards, lots of other stuff, may love it. A lot of the invasive stuff actually really loves it. But other plants, including natives and wildflowers, maybe not so much. So first from the European earthworms and now from the Asian jumping worms, you kind of get these ecological cascades that shift not only the plant species and soil makeup, but every species that relies on those plants and those soil conditions. Birds, salamanders, microbial diversity, all of it. Okay, so to the questions, the first one about identifying them, well, there just isn't one species of jumping worm here in the U.S. There are as many as 16 in North America alone, with 5 or so identified as far north as Canada. So identification is not super easy to pin down, but they are generally larger than European worms, though not all of them. A little bit more audacious, like they will crawl around on the surface. They tend to have a larger, lightly colored band around their bodies, like kind of a pale band is what they call it, called the clitellum. And they like to thrash around when they're exposed or touched, though not all species do that. I will link a paper in the show notes where you can find a good identification photo chart to follow as well, but it's not generally easy to tell them apart from night crawlers, except that for that ring and that thrashing and that they are at the surface during the day, unlike night crawlers who move deeper into the soil for cooler soils. That's why you tend to find night crawlers at night, hence their namesake. In fact, Asian jumping worms are mostly surface dwellers, so unfortunately, although yes, they are doing something similar to European and native earthworms by turning litter into nutrient-rich worm castings, unlike their European counterparts, with Asian jumping worms, those castings are largely staying on the surface, drying out, washing away, not being pulled deep into the soil like with night crawlers. And in fact, where Asian jumping worms are, you are seeing fewer night crawlers, and populations of night crawlers are decreasing, which can have other effects. Many European earthworms have and do some ecological harm, but they also aerate the soils and pull leaf litter deep into the soil layers, increasing nutrient and water movement around the roots. That is not universal. There are actually worms that compact the soil. But anyway, speaking generally here, jumping worms, they don't do that so much. They are, in fact, believed to contribute more to carbon loss than sequestration. Whether they are good or bad for agriculture is still not entirely known. Studies are still somewhat sparse there and will probably stay that way, just based on the fact that there's no funding for research anymore. To the prevention or treatment part of your question, a mustard drench, 1 gallon of water with like a cup of yellow mustard can help compel worms to the surface. So you could just like pick them up or, have your chickens poised and ready to pounce when you slowly pour that mixture on the surface. Not practical on scale, but could at least be a fun thing to watch. Solarization with clear plastic may help reduce their populations as well because they stay high on the surface. In fact, it's possible even that you could pull mulch aside, on a really hot day, let that surface get really hot, and then eliminate some percentage of their populations that way. Brassicas, maybe, but I don't know that there is good evidence for that necessarily. You mentioned moving, plants to other friends or whatever. Nurseries are a prime breeding ground for them, as are mulches and compost piles. In terms of perennials, buying bare root plants is preferred to avoid spreading them. Otherwise, we need birds, snakes, and other predators helping to keep those populations in check. We need good, aggressive ecological management across the board, and we need more research to tell us what is effective on a large scale, which, again, with all of the funding cuts, none of that is probably going to happen. So that's fun. They are still spreading, but in colder areas, much more slowly, like the spreading front, I think they call it, that isn't really progressing quite as much because they are an annual species and places with harsh winters are hard for them to move into. It's hard to say what the effects will be to the ecology, across the United States and to market gardening in the long run. I don't think the effects will generally be all that noticeable for most of us, at least not for a while. Just another not great thing in a pile of other not great things happening environmentally. I think it's safe to say that depleting one of our greatest mulches, leaf litter, is probably not going to be great in terms of water retention and long-term ecological health, which trickles down to social health, which trickles down to economic health, garden health, and eventually just health. Good times. For just a really good follow-up on this particular topic that is more like an hour and a half on the subject rather than 8 or so minutes, is the conversation Mimi did with ecologist Dr. Lee Frelich called Jumping Worms and Other Invasive Species in Forested and Agricultural Lands, which you can find on this podcast feed if you're listening to this, or we'll link it in the show notes. They get way deeper into the nuances with the jumping worms and invasive European worms. Really good stuff. Anyway, great question, and I'm sure we will discuss invasive worms and just worms in general more again in the future. But for the moment, let's take a quick break, and when we return, do you really have to wash your produce for people to buy it? Be right back, or left back. It's up to you. It's really whatever position the coach puts you in. Today's episode is brought to you by FarmRaise. Still struggling with your balance sheet? Your lender's asking for a balance sheet and you're stuck with a spreadsheet mess or guessing your numbers? FarmRaise Tracks takes the stress out of farm finance. With one click, you can generate an accurate, up-to-date balance sheet that shows your assets, liabilities, and equity. No accounting degree required. You'll be ready for loan applications, tax season, or just a clearer picture of where your farm stands. Join thousands of farmers using Tracks to build stronger businesses. Get 20% off with code NOTIL20 at farmraise.com for the lifetime of your membership. Today's episode is also brought to you by Precip. Precip is billed as the easiest way to keep track of rainfall, and that is true, but it is a lot more than that. Sure, you can open the app and immediately see accurate rainfall totals, but you can also save locations to see historical rainfall totals, wind speeds, and all sorts of other nerdy details. Their radar-based technology means you can ditch the rain gauge. I usually have to do that anyway because the kids find a way to smash it with a baseball bat. You can ditch the rain gauge and start tracking rain and other growing conditions all on your phone. Click the link in the show notes to find out more. All right, back to the show. So I saw this comment on Tuesday that I thought was interesting. At the Embryo wrote, quote, "Some veggies should be sold dirty, some keep better clean, sure, but I guess it's wishful thinking for the USA," end quote. And I don't know where this particular person is from, but some version of this question or idea pops up from time to time about cleaning produce. Is it necessary? Is it a good idea? So I'm just going to do meander down a little road for a little bit on this particular topic. The farm I learned to grow on was almost entirely a CSA farm. They were successful. Their CSA, albeit small, sold out almost every year with very enthusiastic customers who adored them and adored the produce. And for good reason. They were great growers, but they also rarely washed anything. Almost all of the produce was distributed with some amount of soil still attached, or maybe it was lightly sprayed off. This was both a matter of practicality. They lived off grid, so water wasn't always super abundant. It was also a small intensive farm, so neither was time in abundance. And there wasn't a space to really wash produce and then store it. We did our best in the field to knock the dirt off, quote unquote, but certainly produce went to the pickup location with dirt still in tow. Now, the customers were largely fine with this, at least the many established ones. It had a novelty to it, probably. Sometimes customers would make jokes about the dirt when it was extra dirty, but for the most part, people didn't bat an eye. But a CSA, and in particular this CSA, is different from a market table because there is a strong relationship between customer and farmer, and the customer has already paid for the produce. There is no decision to be made between the dirty produce and the clean produce. It is indeed harder to sell dirty produce in America, I believe, to the average customer, like market customer, than it might be in a CSA situation or in other countries. Do I think that's a problem? I guess yes and no. On the yes, it's a problem that we can't easily leave dirt on our produce front. We know that exposure to soil is good for people's health, for their people's mental health. There's a reason that gardening is considered therapeutic. The smells and the sounds are part of it, but also there are studies that show a link between exposure to soil organisms and lower rates of depression. So leaving trace amounts of soil on the produce could quite literally lead to happier customers. Also, the wash pack shed is a huge bottleneck on farms, so the idea of not having to wash produce sounds incredible and also significantly more profitable. Moreover, food safety issues often arise most in the wash pack and storage side of things because of water. So in terms of customer safety and liability and also perhaps storageability, not washing produce could actually be a bit safer. Certain crops, and certainly things like potatoes and sweet potatoes, that sort of stuff, actually store better with a little bit of dirt on rather than washing it. But a lot of crops, once you wash them, especially if they have any water left on them, that could lead to a faster rot. Not great for longevity. On the no, it's a problem that we can't easily leave dirt on produce side of things. Well, one, I like to keep my soil on my farm if possible, so washing the produce at least ensures the dirt stays here. I usually wash it into a bucket and then pour that bucket on the compost pile and then recycle it that way. But also, even if you could still sell some produce dirty, there are always going to be people who are not interested in that. It can be hard or at least undesirable to wash produce in a small kitchen, and not everyone knows how to do it properly, so they may feel a little intimidated there. Making it easier on the customer is always a good thing in terms of the business. And one thing I really want to discourage farmers from doing is trying to quote unquote educate customers too much. I see this a lot with newer growers who feel like they want to teach the customers what good food is, and maybe in this case like dirty food is better. And most of the time, though I respect it, it is a difficult chore. Customers mostly want a product, not necessarily like any sort of lecture, and if it's too complicated to buy from you, they just won't do it. That's definitely not to say there isn't a place to educate and excite people about your produce. Education is great and fun, but it does need to be used kind of like salt. A little bit here or there goes a long way. And you can't set your business up in a way that is dependent on educating the customers, i.e. selling dirty produce because you believe that's the better way, because that will be a very hard uphill climb. But I don't want to totally knock it. Now, a savvy, ambitious young farmer with a good marketing mind could parlay the idea of dirty produce into a value add. But for most of us, it's not the worst idea to wash the majority of our produce, especially that which is usually eaten raw, like lettuce. And then you could maybe start to introduce something, some produce with dirt still on, maybe. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on dirty produce. And we're going to wrap up this week and get ready for a little bit of soccer watching tonight. Go racing. Don't forget, No-Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Shouts to Michael and Sarah Palmer for their recent donation. Big shouts for that. Thank you. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow this podcast wherever you are getting it. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No-Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at notillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of June, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Laurel, Aaron Mackin, Casey Townsend, Holly Cox, Andrew Hudson, Andy Novak, Mother Farmer, cool, and Charles Thacker, Kyle Richardville, Patrick Weaver, Alex, not Alex, that would be if I combined your two names, Alex and Oliver, Bill King, and Chris Yates. Okay, so the Kansantonians have to make a decision. They can either take a random farmer prisoner and risk more people coming in search of him, or just let the world find out about them and cash in on, that exposure. The farmer promised he would help ensure their safety and protection, and so the Kansantonians took a vote and decided, well, why not take a prisoner? So they tied the farmer up, got the tractor out of the mud, and drove it humorously, as they did not understand how to drive anything, into a nearby sinkhole and prepared for the possibility that people would come searching for the lost farmer. And they did, and thus began the Great War of Kansatonia. That's probably what they would call it. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you Monday. Bye.
Feels like that.